October, and fall is in full swing. The leaves are turning, the nights are crisp, and Halloween costumes are being dreamed up. No matter how prepared we are for summer to give way to fall, it always seems to catch us by surprise. Wasn't it just yesterday the family was at the beach and we were enjoying long summer nights, not these cold mornings? Change is difficult to prepare for, even when we know it is coming. Change is nearly impossible to prepare for when it comes out of left field. Either way, though, we know we can fall back on our faith to get us through. This takes different shapes for different people, but often includes praying, reading scripture, reaching out to a faith partner, or using tangible objects to give strength that can only come from having faith in God. Neil McGregor wrote a book entitled A History of the World in 100 Objects. In it, he aims to use 100 objects that mankind created, utilized, or threw away to tell the history of humanity. He recognizes that stories are not solely about people, but also about the objects and tools they choose to or not to employ. This viewpoint summarizes my faith journey ever since my first trip to Navajo Land with St. Luke's Youth Group, especially since my accident 17 months ago. So using the 3 objects on this table, I'm going to share how faith has helped me transition to living my life as a walking paraplegic. Object number 1, these teal bracelets. They say we have Mare's back on the outside and end piano violence on the inside. My brother and sister-in-law had them made shortly after my accident on May 29, 2015, when a piano crashed into my back as it was getting moved out of the back of a pickup truck. Let me skip the part of where I spent 15 minutes telling the 3 other individuals how terrible of an idea this was to try to lift this piano and go straight to the moment of impact, the moment when my life flashed before my eyes. I was on the back side of the piano as we lifted it out of the truck bed. I saw it come out unevenly and start to tip towards me. My first instinct was to turn away to protect my head and neck in order to prevent myself from getting a concussion, and to brace for impact by crouching into a ball. As the piano slammed into my back, I was blinded by light and overcome with excruciating pain. In the split second between time of impact and when I began screaming in pain, God and I had a little chat. I remember telling him I was not ready to die, especially from a piano falling on top of me. That I still had so much to do in this world, that I couldn't leave my family this way, that I would fight the paralysis with everything I had if he let me live. That's right, I knew immediately that I was paralyzed. I just didn't know to what extent yet. After I finished screaming, I yelled at my friends to call 911 and to get me a paramedic because I needed pain meds. In this moment of shock, my EMT training from Post 53 took over, and I began to assess my condition. I quickly discovered that I could wiggle my fingers, it hurt to take a deep breath, the pain in my back seemed to be in the mid to lower region, and I could not feel, let alone move anything below my waist. At this point, I remember thanking God for my only being a paraplegic and not a quadriplegic. The next thing I knew, the paramedics from Colchester Rescue Squad descended upon me and began treating me. I should note that since I volunteered with Colchester Rescue up in Vermont, I knew the crew that responded to my accident. This was one of many blessings God bestowed upon me that day. I had the most experienced and the most faithful paramedics in our entire service taking care of me. Once they arrived, I knew I could finally give up control, and they would treat me with exceptional care. For the next 4 hours, most of which I do not remember, I alternated between freaking out that I could not feel my legs and cracking jokes at my own expense. For those that are squeamish, I will leave out the medical details of this story, but I will mention that I was diagnosed with a fractured sternum and a burst fracture of my first lumbar vertebrae, resulting in paraplegia. If you look at my MRI though, there is no doubt that God had his hands wrapped around my spinal cord, protecting it from being completely severed by the shattered vertebrae. While I had the privilege of being medicated for pain and anxiety until an operating room became available, my family did not share that same privilege. My parents had to make the 5-hour drive north, and my brother and his wife ultimately had to fly in from a wedding in Michigan. During my 8-hour surgery, I took a nice nap, and they were trying to hold it together. To this day, I do not know how they managed, But to those of you that prayed for me and for their safe travel, thank you. When I woke up the next day, May 30th, I realized a guardian angel named Dr. Leonardini had operated on me for 8 hours and put me back together again. I certainly had not planned to celebrate my 25th birthday in a surgical intensive care unit at the University of Vermont Medical Center. But Dr. Leonardini gave me some pretty cool presents. I received 2 titanium rods, 4 screws, steel cage, and a whole lot of human cadaver. As cool as these are, the most important gift he gave me was a second shot at life and a chance to walk again. He was truly a gift from God. As I was lying in my ICU bed, my brother David and his wife Kate dreamed up the idea for these bracelets to remind me that throughout the long rehabilitation process, I would never be alone. The bracelets also turned into a source of humor for me, as the hashtag #EndPianoViolence has become my signature tagline for anything related to my recovery and new life as a walking paraplegic. Little did they know that on the days when I started to question if I have the strength to keep fighting, why this had to happen to me, and how did this fit into God's plan, I look down at the bracelet on my wrist and know that so many people, including God, have my back. Not to mention, I laugh when I remember everyone's reaction when they learned of the #EndPianoViolence hashtag. Laughter, faith, and ice cream are good medicine. I am the farthest thing from alone, and I know that God has given me the resources and people I need to succeed in this fight. This is perfectly summed up by a verse from 1 Corinthians. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tested beyond your strength. But with the testing, he will also provide the way out so that you may be able to endure it. Asking for help is often seen as a sign of weakness. But what I've learned since my accident is that it's actually a sign of strength. I'm referring to both small and big things, from asking someone to carry my groceries to someone carrying me on the beach. Be brave and ask for help when you need it. Offer to help others while respecting their independence and dignity. And never underestimate the power God's love can have in comforting and motivating someone in their time of need. Object number 2, this prayer shawl, which was made by the knitting group here at St. Luke's. While I would say I am past the age of traveling with a security blanket like a child does, this prayer shawl has made quite a few trips with me. Most notably are the 2 trips I took for work to Minneapolis. Each trip was 10 days in length. The first trip was last December, just 6 months after my accident. It also was the first time I flew since getting hurt. Flying is stressful in and of itself. Now add on worrying about how to navigate security when you have titanium inside of you. You cannot walk unassisted. You do not know if you have to go to the bathroom. Your feet swell super easily. And you have already survived a near-death encounter with a piano. The prayer shawl became my comfort object on the plane, helped regulate my temperature, and reminded me that fear of dying would not get me anywhere. I had to have faith and keep on living my life. Once I was out in Minneapolis, my body struggled to meet all the demands I was asking of it. Sitting in class all day, walking to the cafeteria at lunch, studying at night, missing physical therapy, and not sleeping in my own bed. Needless to say, there were many days when I broke down at night, questioned why everything was so hard, and if I should even bother trying to return to the job I had prior to my accident. What kept me going was knowing that God had led me to this job and blessed me with supportive coworkers. Together, we would figure out a way to make my job work and for me to connect with my patients on a level none of my coworkers could. This prayer shawl also was the sole reason I kept it together one day in the classroom when my paralyzed pelvic floor freaked out on me. Every time I wrap myself with the shawl, I can feel God's arms and the prayers of all who have been praying for me surround me. This is not a fight I could ever take on by myself, and no transition in health ever should have to be. Whether it is a sudden or a gradual shift, find something or someone that you can surround yourself with to remind yourself of the power of prayer and God's love. As it says in 1 Corinthians, love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Questioning why one gets sick or hurt can only drag us down. Focus on what treatments are available, what facilities you can go to, what sorts of people you gain strength and energy from, and what makes you want to wake up every day and fight. For me, Spaulding Rehab Hospital and my current rehab facility Journey Forward are where I need to be. Adaptive sports and my family give me energy. God catches me when my strength starts to falter, and I want to wake up every day to prove that having a spinal cord injury does not preclude me from leading a happy and healthy life. Object number 3. Try not to drop it. This rosary, which was given to me by the chaplain at Boston College from the group the Episcopal Chaplaincy at BC. As you can see, this rosary is framed next to a self-portrait I took in high school, walking down the center aisle of our church. It may seem silly that I'm presenting this rosary as a tangible object of my faith these past 17 months, since it's in a frame and it doesn't go anywhere with me. But it's who and what the rosary remind me of that is influential. This is one of the last things I see before I fall asleep every night, and one of the first things I see as I get dressed in the morning. I received this rosary on senior night from the chaplain at BC. She always closed our services with the following blessing. As we go forth into the world, may we seek the face of Jesus in everyone we meet, and may everyone we meet see the face of Jesus Christ in us. My accident and subsequent physical disability has shifted my entire perception of the world. In a split second, I went from being a very active, fully employed, completely independent person to not even being able to sit up in bed or get dressed on my own. I had to find the humility to let my mom and my nurses take care of me in the hospital, and the presence of mind to accept that part of a spinal cord injury is dealing with pelvic floor paralysis. After about the age of 6, having bathroom accidents is no longer socially acceptable. But what I have learned is that if I don't make a big deal out of it, no one else will either, usually because they don't notice. Life is all about perception and realizing that we all hide our weaknesses from the public eye. No one talks about his or her medical conditions openly. Unfortunately, with a physical disability, I do not have that luxury. It is on display at all times, especially when I use a walker. There is nothing conspicuous about these orthotic braces I have to wear to correct from the remaining paralysis. My crutches have a mind of their own, and often fall into people near me in lines or at tables. And let's just admit, the world is not well designed for wheelchair accessibility. Elevators and taxis seem to be a common place where people directly inquire what happened to me. I used to be offended by it, but I decided that instead of feeling awkward and ashamed about my disability, I would be proud to be a walking paraplegic. So I simply tell them that I was partially paralyzed from a piano falling on top of me. Not only does that typically end the conversation, but I walk away from the situation feeling tall and confident. God made us all unique, and if we can be proud of who we are, we can build better connections with those we encounter in our daily lives. Since my accident, I've had numerous people open up to me about a friend or relative of theirs with a disability, or that they themselves struggle with pelvic floor issues. By making myself vulnerable and talking about my accident or how my disability affects my life, I have found I connect in a more meaningful way with people I encounter, such as patients I work with, fellow spinal cord injury survivors, and even strangers. One of my closest friends today is a girl named Bella. I met her during my inpatient time at Spaulding Rehab. She broke her neck diving into second base during a Division I softball game and suffered paralysis on the entire right side of her body. Side note, she's now walking and is probably going to go play softball again, but good for her. Not only was she one of my secret guardian angels during my acute rehab phase, but she has become a person I turn to when my faith starts to falter, when I need to be reminded of God's bigger plan, and when I need to find the hidden source of strength at rehab. She and I frequently share stories with each other about interactions we have had with complete strangers or how our accidents have tested our faith. By no means do I believe everything happens for a reason. I do, however, believe that God and our faith can get us through whatever challenges are placed in our lives. Since my accident, I have gained a better appreciation for the need for inclusive design in buildings, the power adaptive sports can have on helping someone with a disability adapt to their new lives, and the strength it takes to admit that we are lost or not fully independent. By making ourselves vulnerable and being more open to the struggles others are facing, we are able to support and love each other as God loves us. So here are my 3 objects that illustrate how faith has helped me adapt to my life as a walking paraplegic. The End Piano Violence bracelet has not left my wrist since it first went on in June 2015. It actually has a companion bracelet now I received from Spalding Rehab with their slogan of "Find Your Strength." They are constant reminders that I am not alone and that humor can go a long way. The prayer shawl is how I wrap myself with God's love and all of the prayers for my healing. It is the extra sense of strength and comfort I need during the difficult times. And the rosary from Boston College reminds me that God adjusted his plan for the work he wants me to carry out after my freak accident. It reminds me to step outside my comfort zone, make myself vulnerable, and to love freely as he loves us. Adjusting to this new life of being a walking paraplegic has not happened without a change in my faith. Before I got hurt, I felt closest to God when I was immersed in nature, usually when I was skiing, running, or sailing. But now I feel God within me on a daily basis. He is that inner drive to wake up and fight to the best of my ability each day. He is that sense of calm and acceptance I feel as I walk using my assistive devices, that there is some greater purpose to this whole situation. He is that shift in perspective as if I am seeing the world and the rest of his children in a new light. He is that understanding that while I have a disability, I absolutely am not disabled. Rather, I am adaptively abled and able to immerse myself in his creation, just with some creativity sometimes. He is that voice reminding me that I am strong enough and I am loved unconditionally. Psalm 46 says, God is within her, she will not fall. Or at least if I do fall, I'll get back up. Health is something we often take for granted. We cannot always plan for it to shift as we can the seasons. But it is inevitable that at some point in our lives or in the lives of our loved ones, it will shift. What is important to remember is how we choose to react to that transition and to be willing to admit we can fight so much harder when we have the help and love of others behind us. The past 17 months have been incredibly hard, but I'm so blessed with all that has come out of what could have been a tragic situation. As strange as it might sound, I would not trade my new perspective on life, the people I have met, and where God is leading me for having fully functioning legs and a working pelvic floor. John Piper sums up the past 17 months of my faith journey excellently when he said, occasionally, weep deeply over the life you hoped would be. Grieve the losses, then wash your face, trust God, and embrace the life you have. Thank you.